The wife, the fool, and the revenge. I should have known better. I always should. But there I was, staring at her across the cafe, feeling that familiar, stupid pull in my chest. The kind of pull that makes rational thought evaporate and leaves you clumsy, desperate, ridiculous. Her name was Claire, and she belonged to someone else. I didn't know him well. Michael, her husband, seemed polite enough, average in every sense. But I did know me. I was the kind of man who fell hard, fast, and with no regard for consequences. And now, with her laugh spilling across the room, sunlight catching in her hair, I was done for. It started innocently, small glances across the grocery store, a shared joke about burnt coffee at the cafe. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just appreciating beauty. But the truth is, I was a fool. A hopeless, self-destructing fool. One evening, after weeks of innocent encounters, we ended up at a party Michael was hosting. So cliché, I know. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. Claire and I found ourselves talking in the corner, away from the prying eyes of spouses and friends. She laughed at everything I said, her hand brushing mine just enough to set my heart on fire. I had never felt such reckless, delicious danger. I leaned closer. I whispered something stupid, flirty, entirely inappropriate. And I swear, she leaned in too. I should have stopped there. I should have walked away. But I didn't. For weeks, we flirted. I imagined her alone. I imagined her soft lips and the warmth of her body pressed against mine. Every text, every secret smile, every accidental touch was a dagger and a drug all at once. I was addicted. I was ruined. And Michael, he knew. He always knew. The first clue should have been the slightly too wide smile at the next neighborhood barbecue, or the way he casually commented on how friendly I was with his wife. I laughed it off, thinking he was just a paranoid man. Then came the subtle warnings. Empty coffee mugs appearing mysteriously on my porch, my favorite pen disappearing, an extra-large bright pink flamingo in my front yard overnight. He had style. One evening, after Claire and I had shared a particularly daring kiss behind the garage during a garden party, Michael appeared. Calm, impossibly calm, holding a tray of cupcakes. "Thought you might enjoy dessert," he said, smiling in that way that made the hairs on my neck stand up. He handed me one. I took a bite. It was delicious. And then I noticed the aftertaste, a faint hint of laxative. I had to run. I sprinted to the bathroom, barely making it in time. Claire appeared seconds later, giggling, but the moment of fun had shifted. This was not just flirtation anymore. Michael had entered the game, and I had no idea how good he was. Over the next month, the revenge escalated in ways I could never have anticipated. My car's horn would blare at random intervals, usually when I was in meetings or at the grocery store. Once I found a live chicken in my bathtub. Another time, my bed had been rigged with plastic wrap, so I slid straight into the floor the moment I tried to lie down. Through it all, Claire laughed. She found it thrilling, dangerous, hilarious. I, however, was terrified. I had been living like a king of mischief, thinking I was untouchable, only to discover that Michael was the true mastermind. But the thing that got me, the thing that really made me question every choice, was the dinner party. Michael invited us both over, me, the other man, and Claire, his unsuspecting wife. Everything seemed normal. The wine was flowing, the lights were warm, and I was already sweating under the table from nerves. Michael clapped his hands. "Let's play a game!" Of course, it was a trap. He had arranged something absurd, a scavenger hunt of my own humiliation. The first clue led me to the fridge where I found a note. "Check under the Jell-O mold." I bent down and there was a live frog. Not a small one, a huge, croaking monstrosity. I screamed. The guests laughed. Claire laughed too, but her eyes for the first time reflected concern. By the time the final clue arrived, I was a wreck. I was covered in jelly, feathers from a piñata incident, and frankly, I had no dignity left. Michael appeared, holding a giant inflatable hammer. "Ready?" he said. I froze. He swung. Not at me, not physically, but metaphorically, spiritually, and emotionally. The look in his eyes was so calm, so unbothered, that I realized I had underestimated him. He wasn't just a husband. He was a genius of petty revenge. And Claire? She had played her part perfectly. She laughed at my pain, leaned on Michael's shoulder, and whispered something about karma that made my stomach twist. That night, as I walked home, covered in a mixture of shame and whipped cream from a failed cake stunt, I understood the truth. I had been reckless, foolish, and entirely selfish. I had played with fire, and Michael had not just thrown water on me. He had turned the hose into a full-on tidal wave of cosmic justice. The final act came a week later. Michael invited me to his garage for a friendly drink. I should have known better. I stepped inside and immediately realized this was the pièce de résistance. A life-sized mannequin, dressed exactly like me, was seated in the corner. Next to it, a stack of photographs chronicling every foolish move I had made over the last 2 months. Every flirt, every whispered joke, every stolen glance at Claire. I laughed nervously. "Very funny," I said, but my voice cracked. Michael smiled. "I thought you'd appreciate a little retrospective." He pressed a button and suddenly the mannequin moved, jerky, terrifyingly realistic. I jumped back, screaming. Claire burst out laughing. Michael calmly sipped his drink. It was the perfect mix of sinister and hilarious. I was humiliated beyond repair, yet oddly alive. Alive because Michael had spared me the truly cruel stuff. This was artistry, performance, a warning. I realized that in this absurd ordeal, I had been taught a lesson: never mess with someone who knows you too well. Months later, Claire and I never crossed that line again. I stayed, awkwardly, in the safe territory of friendship, watching Michael with awe and mild terror. The man was a master of revenge, a brilliant, funny, terrifyingly clever husband. And I was the cautionary tale. I tell this story not as a lament, but as a confession. I learned something crucial in the strangest, most humiliating way. Love without boundaries, lust without caution, is dangerous. And sometimes the world, or the right husband, will answer with a smile, a wink, and a giant inflatable hammer. I survived, barely, and with all my dignity shredded. But I learned the one thing that mattered: never, ever underestimate a husband scorned, especially when he's funny, terrifying, and relentless in his pursuit of poetic justice.